قدحا فالمغيرات صبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن به جمعا إن الإنسان لربه لكنود وإنه على ذلك لشهيد إنه لحب الخير لشديد أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور حصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم فإن تنازعتم في شيء فردوه إلى الله والرسول إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر ذلك خير وأحسن تعويلا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أيها الرسول بلغ ما أنزل إليك من ربك وإن لم فما بلغت رسالته والله يعصمك من الناس إن الله لا يهدي القوم الكافرين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على رسول الله وآله.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the Eid Al-Ghadir celebration by the Oasis Institute. Thank you all for joining us. Sorry, one moment. Thank you all for joining us and bearing with us as we go through a little bit of technical difficulties here in the beginning. So we're going to go ahead and start. If you'll bear with me with one more salawat, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the presentation in a minute. Salawat to Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay. So, assalamu alaikum once more, and belated Eid Mubarak to everyone. So the title of my talk today is called Reaching the Oasis. And what I wanted to do was kind of run through an overview of some important topics that will help us understand the ultimate significance of this day and why we celebrate. And there are three main topics that I want to touch on. So one is the setting of Ghadir, the sermon of Ghadir, and contextualizing the sermon, understanding some of the important events that preceded the sermon. And then, of course, hit some highlights of the sermon itself and its relevance, both in our religion and our practice. And everyone able to hear me, by the way? Yes. It's good? Okay. Okay, perfect. All right. Okay. Okay. First thing I wanted to talk about was when exactly it happened. So it was during the Prophet's final year on earth. It was actually after an event known as the Farewell Pilgrimage. And it's important that the Prophet advertised it as his last year on earth, and this will be the last time that the Muslims are able to embark on the Hajj with him, to learn the ritual of the Hajj alongside him. And so with that announcement made, with that advertisement made, there was a large gathering of Muslims that came with him. The caravans were huge, and it was, according to narrations, they're up to about 100 attended physically the sermon of Ghadir. So we look at exactly where the Prophet embarked from. So he was going from Medina towards Mecca, along with a huge caravan of Muslims. So I'm going to skip forward a little bit here. And I have on display here a map of Saudi Arabia. And what happened was, after the rituals of Hajj were completed, instead of everyone going home, the Prophet commanded everyone to go to a location known as Al-Ja'far. And that was is highlighted in the map there in that little pinpoint. Now, there are multiple reasons why why he selected this particular location for the sermon. And we're going to go through the three main reasons that this was carefully picked by the prophet. So, why Al-Jaffa? Well, first of all, the location itself was on a road that was ideal for the travelers that came to the Hajj. So, the road travels up north from Mecca, and it diverges into multiple roads that go towards modern-day Egypt. It goes towards Medina, and so on and so forth. So right before that, the divergence happens, there's this location known as Al-Jaffa. And here, so on display, there's a display of like a human hand. So if you think of the human hand, you have the fingers that diverge. Well, the Al-Jaffa is like that palm. It's that right before that divergence point. So that made it ideal for the pilgrims who are returning home to have a location that was on their way. Next, so we have a couple of photos of the what it looks like sort of modern day. As you can tell, it's an arid and hot, it's expansive desert region. And so what makes this important, though, is that around this expansive desert region, there were many ghadirs. So ghadir in Arabic literally means like a pond or a pool of water. So in this location, it was in the floodplains of the Jufa Valley. It collected floodwaters throughout the year, and that made it ideal to have a water source. When you're in a hot, arid environment, it's good to have a water source nearby. So there's multiple oases, and Ghadir al-Khum is literally was just a specific pond entitled the Pond of Khum. Now, another thing that this location had was the acacia trees. And so the picture, as you can see here, there's a giraffe. There weren't any giraffes roaming around during the sermon, but that picture is there to show the scale of these trees. So as you can tell, the tree scales the size of the giraffe, and we all know how big they can get. So that made it ideal because, once again, if you're going to have this sermon, very important sermon with this large gathering of Muslims, you want to have the shade there as well. So the Prophet commanded his companions to drape a canopy, to build a pulpit, and then he had one of his companions serve as a sound system to distance away from. There's a map there, there's pictures of ponds. So the question that I'd like you all to wonder at this point is, and you're probably wondering this, is why should we know all this? Why is it important? Well, as I said, this sermon was preceded by the farewell pilgrimage, and it was advertised as this momentous occasion to go with the Prophet on his final Hajj. That drew out what is estimated to be about 120,000 people crowd that attended the sermon. And that was at the moment, at that time in history, the largest gathering of Muslims. So you have the largest gathering of Muslims, you have this ideal location with ponds, with trees nearby, an ideal location that is on the way for the travelers. And what's important to note about all this is that, talk about the Sermon of Ghadir, a lot of times it is minimalized. It's minimalized for, for whoever I am a leader, Ali is also a leader. But there are many Muslims was exactly picked to serve for an ideal place for this crowd of 120,000 people. So that helps us understand that the full setting actually plays a role into understanding the actual significance of this sermon. So, what is the legacy of the sermon? Because we know that, as I said, a lot of people try to minimalize the message that the sermon was trying to send. Well, if you look at Islamic literature, there are many narrations of the sermon, many authenticated narrations, well over 100 narrations that discuss the sermon, either referencing directly or discussing it. And if we look, there's even, for example, the Musnad of Ahmad bin Hanbal. Ahmad bin Hanbal, of course, being the father of the Hanbali school of jurisprudence within Sunni Islam. And within his Musnad, which is a collection of sayings and narrations from the Prophet and his companions, there is well over 30 mentions of the Sermon of Hadith. Likewise, there was a Shia scholar by the name of Sheikh Hussein Amini, who compiled a set of books called Al-Ghadir. He basically scoured all of the Sunni documents and literature. He compiled a volume of 20 books that all discuss the narrations of the Sermon of Ghadir. So as we can tell, the legacy of the sermon is very strong within Islamic literature, whether you're looking at Sunni or Shia sources. So I want to switch a little bit and talk about and further contextualize the sermon. I want to talk about a couple of events that preceded the sermon itself. So we have narrations that talk about the bestowing the prophetic inheritance to Imam Ali alayhi salam. So this occurred before the sermon itself. It was a private ceremony where the Prophet gave Imam Ali a certain number of things that had been passed down by the other prophets. And this is to further just to take home the message that this line of succession was very clear and explicit. And so we have things that were given, such as the scrolls of Adam, the books of Nuh and Ibrahim, the Torah of Musa, the Injil of Isa, the staff of Musa, and the ring of Sulaiman. Further, there's the title of the commander of the faithful, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, that we refer to Imam Ali as. So narrations say that it was the angel Jibreel who actually came down under the commandment of God and gave this title to Imam Ali alayhi salam. And it was with this title that the Prophet exclusively referred to him as. So it wasn't something that other people gave to him or something that he earned after the Prophet's death. This was something that the Prophet himself would exclusively refer to as for Imam Ali. Now, going into the sermon itself, before he begins with the sermon, the Prophet reveals a revelation from the Quran, which is Surah Ma'idah, ayah 67. And it says, O Prophet, announce what has reached you from your Lord, for if you do not, you will not have delivered his message at all. So, and of course, I've bolded the area that is particularly of importance. And we know that the Prophet, this is his farewell pilgrimage, this last year on earth. So he's been spending his life trying to convey the message of Islam. But if he doesn't deliver this message on this grand stage, again, that has been established, then it will be as if the message hasn't been conveyed at all. So that, once again, just highlights how important of an occasion this is. And it wasn't, again, just something spontaneous that he came up with on the moment. We have the famous line, of course, for whoever I am a leader, Ali is also his leader. And the imagery that the narrations depict is that Imam Ali was standing at a lower elevation than the Prophet, but the Prophet took his hand and lifted him up to a point where they were standing on an equal height. The Sermon of Ghadir also gives us the Hadith of Thaqalain, which is, of course, the Hadith that describes the two weighty things. One being the book of God, the Quran, and then the other being the Ahlul Bayt, who will serve as guides for the Quran. I've actually included a narration here from Sahih Muslim, which is a book of authenticated Hadith that is part of the canonical series of Hadith that is used by Sunni scholarship. And it's considered amongst Sunni scholarship to be next to the Quran in authority. And we can see that, once again, this isn't something that is limited to Shia sources or literature, but it is extensive within all of Muslim literature. The authority of the Imams is, once again, enunciated. So you have, O people, I am a messenger, and Ali is the Imam and the Wasi after me, and so are the Imams after him from among his offspring. So it's not just that Imam Ali is a successor, but there is a line of successors that will continue until the end of time. And the Prophet makes sure to mention Imam Mahdi explicitly as well. So again, I'd like to take a pause. So going through the setting, going through the various preceding events that preceded the sermon itself, and going through the sermon, I've highlighted a couple of things that I thought were really interesting and important to understand the significance. I was having a discussion about the sermon of Ghadir and the succession of the Prophet. And I was having a discussion with friends of mine who happen to be Sunni, and they asked me, all right, so you have all these authentic hadith, you have these narrations, or these things in books of history. But at the end of the day, history always remembers the first caliph to be Abu Bakr. There's no history textbooks in our history, for instance, that talk about the first caliph being Imam Mahdi at this time. So then, so what? So what's all this for? You know, why continue persisting with the celebration of Eid al-Hadith? And by the way, I encourage all of you to wonder that question as well if you will ever come up with it, and to think about the answer that you would give. The answer that I gave at that moment was that the prophetic mission and the sermon of Hadith was never about politics. It wasn't about establishing a Muslim empire with Ali as the ruler king or the political dynasty that would flourish for centuries. So that was never the goal, right? The goal of the prophetic mission and really the sermon of Hadith at the end of the day was spiritual enlightenment. It was reaching towards that Sirat al-Mustaqim, that straight path. And for all of us in here, every time we do our prayer, every time we do namaz, 5 times a day, we recite Surah Fatiha, and we ask God, we plead with Him to take us towards that Sirat al-Mustaqim, take us towards that straight path. Well, on the day of Ghadir, we're celebrating getting one step closer to that straight path. We were given a line of succession. We were given, of course, the book of God, the completion of the book, and then the guides who would help us interpret that book. So it was all in all an important day because of those reasons, and of course because after the sermon of Ghadir, we have the revelation from Surah Ma'idah, Ayah 5. Today I have perfected your system of belief and bestowed my favors upon you in full, and I've chosen Islam as the creed for you. So it was with that reaffirmation that the Prophet did, because of course we know that the Prophet declared Imam Ali to be a successor multiple times in his life, but with this reaffirmation on the day of Ghadir and this grand stage established amongst the largest crowd of Muslims gathered up to that point in history, once the reaffirmation was made, this revelation was given to the people by God Himself. So, having said all that, I want to once again wish you all a wonderful Eid Mubarak, and thank you all for your time. Salawatu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you so much. All the Eids Mubarak to everybody. It was a very nice presentation, very illustrative, and I personally learned a lot actually. I really like the pictures. Thank you. Let's applaud our brother. Okay, my name is Surush. Actually, it's interesting. I flew from California. It's my birthday today, so it was nice to basically kind of unite the birthday shenanigans with the day shenanigans together today. So that's why I'm here, and it's very exciting for me. Alhamdulillah. So today, you know, in addition to the Eid al-Ghadir that we are kind of lately celebrating for it, it's also the occasion of Eid Mubarak, which I would like to talk about very briefly. You know, basically, I think it was the 9th year of the Hijrah, exactly 1 year before the demise of the Prophet, that some Christians heard the voice of the Islam, you know, in the city of Najran, and they appointed a delegation consisting of 14 Christian scholars who came to the Prophet and tried to put forth their arguments and basically try to either convince Prophet or get convinced. But you know, Prophet brought them reasons and they just didn't listen. So when you don't listen, nothing's gonna happen, right? And the arguments were going nowhere. That was the point that a verse of Quran was revealed to the Prophet, that basically the story of, oh, Prophet, tell them that the story of Jesus is like the story of Adam. We told Adam be, and it was. Same thing happened for Jesus. He is our servant, and we just told him to be, and we can do whatever we want. No mother, no father, that's it. You know, he only had a mother, Virgin Mary. So But then they didn't accept it, and that's where this verse was revealed that وَتَعَالُوا أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ. Go, let's gather our sons and your sons. Let's gather your women and our women. And let's gather our selves and your selves. So, and then let's see whoever that is telling the truth, we're asking Allah humbly that Allah puts His curse on the other side, the wrong side. So they were kind of thinking whether they have to take the challenge, they have to come forward or not. So they discussed this together, the delegation of 14 people. Turns out that, well, they came to this consensus that, okay, let's see who Prophet brings. If he brings like some, random, like people, the people of the masjid or his community, that there's nothing more than establishing a cult for him. It's nothing. But if he brings the beloved ones, then there's something going. We have to be scared. That's what happened. Prophet brought Abna'ana, his sons, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. Wanisana, he only brought Lady Fatima, the dearest lady of the time to him. And Anfusana wa Anfusana, ourselves. As his self, he brought Imam Ali alayhi salam. And that's it. Son-in-law, daughter, and 2 sons. And that's why when the Christians saw that, they were like, whoa, it's not gonna work. This is dangerous. We're not gonna enter this game, and they backed up. And this is a great day for us, and it was a nice kind of a reminder to talk about that. With that, I would like to invite Maulana Sayyid Sulaiman. Before that, I'm going to give a very brief bio about him. Sayyid Sulaiman, he used to study in Rome for a few years, and after that he finished his PhD in University of Chicago. And as you know, University of Chicago is one of the strongest programs in humanity that we have across the country. And alhamdulillah, after that, they were successful to establish a seminary in Chicago called the Beit El. So it's very exciting for me to actually visit the president of Beit El here in person. So inshallah, with that in mind, we're gonna invite Maulana Sayyid Sulaiman with a loud salawat. Also, I'd like to use the opportunity and thank Sayyid Kashmiri for being here. It's such an honor.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين الهداة المهديين ورحمة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. Respected Sayyid, dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Eid Mubarak to all of you. It is a very blessed and a very auspicious occasion. We had 2 very eloquent and well-stated and comprehensive presentations introducing us to 2 of the most important events in Islamic history. And we are limited in time. A question that comes to the mind of many people when they hear about the event of Al-Ghadir, the event of Mubahana, and that perhaps a question or an objection that many Muslim and maybe some non-Muslim students of these events may ask. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Can everyone hear him in the back?
You're not able to hear me? All right.
That's great.
I can raise my voice. I might lose my voice. That might work to your benefit. It will shorten my presentation. At any point, if you're not able to hear me, then send me a signal and I will try to accommodate, inshallah, to the best of my ability. So as I said, what I would like to address is a question that often comes to mind when people are introduced to the event of Al-Ghadir or the event of Mubahana. And that question is, have the followers of Ahlul Bayt exaggerated the importance of these events? are they really as important as the followers of Ahlul Bayt believe and claim? Or is there some exaggeration or some increased focus beyond this historical and the theological significance of these events? And in order to answer that question, I want to move back a little bit and try to see if we can understand where did Islam in some way go off its intended track. Is there a point at which we can say that Muslims lost sight of the priorities and of the source of strength of their religious message? And then we can understand the significance of the historical events of Al-Ghadir and Mubahala, not in terms of the history, and not even only in terms of the text or the words that the Prophet used, but in terms of the context and in terms of the principles that those events were meant to enshrine for the Muslims. So it's possible for us to have a historical debate about why did the Prophet say these words in the book. It's possible for us to have a textual debate about why did the Prophet use the word Mawla and not use another word that may not have been subject to different arguments or interpretations. But those, although they're valid discussions, they kind of miss the point. I am not the one to determine whether the Prophet should have said something here or in some other place. I am not the one to say, well, I imagine the Prophet should have said, for example, the word Amir or the word Khalifa, and the word Mawla, for example, isn't what I would have expected. I derive meaning and I derive inspiration from the words the Prophet used. And so that kind of misses the major point. We have to begin to understand what was the heart of the message of the Prophet. And did the Muslim community at some point misunderstand the heart of that message? And that will be the starting point for us to see the significance of what the Prophet said and did in Ghadir and at the event of Mubarak. Now, when you look at the question of did the Muslims misunderstand parts of the Prophet's message, it's a very difficult question to answer. Because generally speaking, you don't realize the symptoms of a deviation until well after the sickness has actually taken root within the body. It might be years after a person starts smoking before they really feel the effects of that bad health choice. And in terms of a society, in terms of a religion, in terms of a civilization, it's even more difficult sometimes to see where and when and why that misunderstanding took place. For example, Rome was once a very powerful empire. Before Rome was an empire, it was a republic. Now, maybe not a very good republic by our modern standards. And if our republic degenerates, maybe you will say it was a very good republic by our degenerated standards. But regardless of the nature of that political and that civilizational unit, at what point would you say that Rome was no longer a republic? You might say that it was a few decades before the Common Era, the fateful events around Julius Caesar's actions within the Roman Senate. You may say that it came before, when there was a militarization of Roman society, the resulting power of the generals, the resulting involvement of slaves and a slave-based economy that destabilized the citizenry of Rome, and that naturally resulted in the formal transfer of the government system from a republic to an empire. That was not, the crossing of the Rubicon was not the cause, but the result or the effect. Many of you may have studied or may be familiar with Roman history from school or from popular culture, and so that might be an example that we can relate to. But you can find other examples throughout history. And so the question is, what was the comparable event within the Muslim world? When Muslims may have planted the seeds of sedition and damage to Islam that wasn't obvious at the time, but it had an effect for the future. And I think the clearest and the most powerful instantiation and imagery we can get of how Muslims misunderstood Islam is to take a look at certain key concepts that we have within Islam. How were they explained by the Prophet, and how were they understood by the Muslims? So, Islam in its golden age, as many Muslims know the early decades and centuries of Islam, it exploded on the world stage. It defeated the Persian and the Roman and the Coptic and many other larger and smaller governments and societies, and created a new civilization, even beyond the number of Muslims. What is it that most Muslims have a great deal of pride in that golden age of Islam? It is conquests. It is political expansion and military success. And it is in those terms that many Muslims understood the promise of Islam to be fulfilled. So the Quran says, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ. Allah sent His messenger with guidance and with the true religion, so that that true devotion and law will vanquish all belief and all other systems of law and government. Deen in the Quranic and in the Arabic at that time did not refer just to a religion, but to a system of law and government and life. Something between religion and law and civilization. لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ. Islam was to triumph over all other forms of social, legal, and spiritual identity and organization. How did most Muslims understand that promise? Did they say that we need to purify ourselves and create a depth of identity that by example will convince other people that there is substance to our message and they should become Muslim? Or did they think that what that means is that we need to ready our armies and we need to defeat the enemies of monotheism, the enemies of the Prophet, the enemies of religion? Well, if you study books of tafsir, commentary of the Quran, if you study much of Islamic history as it was written, Muslims largely thought that the political and the military success of Islam is a means for the spread of Islam and is one of the evidence, the pieces of evidence that this religion is true, because God helped the Muslims to take over much of the known world. And that might seem to be a minor point, but it's not by any means a minor point. It means that certain fundamental concepts of Islam were misunderstood and were taken off of their original and their intended meaning. In the interest of time, I'm just going to speak of one concept, just one out of numerous Islamic and Quranic concepts that were taken off of their Quranic intention and understood by Muslims in a very different way. And one of those concepts, perhaps the most poignant, is the word jihad. So for Muslims and for many non-Muslims, what is the first association that comes from the word jihad? It's going to be a military association. If you are a practicing Muslim, then it might be a very inspiring history of just warfare and conquest. If you are on the other side, it might be a term that inspires fear or anger, but it's generally associated with military campaigns. What is the Quranic association of jihad? وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Those who do jihad in our path, God promises jihad is correlated not with triumph, not with conquest, not with defeat, but with guidance. So the Quranic concept of jihad is a concept that results in guidance, not a concept that results in conquest. In other words, the Quranic concept of jihad is not external, but it is internal. It's not something that is going to show up quantitatively, we have the world, but it is going to show up qualitatively, you will be reformed. And in fact, according to authentic Islamic teachings, one of the places where God accepts the prayers of a Muslim is on the battlefield. And that's a very interesting point. And you will find that teaching reflected within authentic Islamic teachings. Whenever warfare or jihad is mentioned, there is a very strong emphasis on demilitarizing warfare. In other words, you're on the battlefield, you're in a military campaign, but Islam tells us don't think as a soldier, think as somebody who has a spiritual responsibility to God and to humanity. That's why when Sayyid Sistani gave the order for the people of Iraq to defend their identity and their homeland, he said, make sure that you are conscious of your prayer. Now, that might not be the advice that a general gives when he's sending his armies to the battlefield. The most important thing is to pray. But that is the advice that Islam gives to its soldiers. Because if you're conscious of prayer, you're never going to commit a war crime. You're never going to use your weapon when there is another means to resolve a dispute. And in a hadith of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he said that when a person is in the battlefield, that is a time for dua. And that is a time when prayers to God are accepted. Because it is a spiritual time. You should only be on that battlefield if you don't care about life or death. You don't care about victory or defeat. But you have reformed yourself to represent and then to want to give your life for a cause of justice, for a cause that is greater than yourself. So you are there not to kill, but you are there to offer yourself in sacrifice. That is what I mean by jihad being demilitarized by Islam. It's an internal project that results in guidance. And therefore, the strongest weapon of jihad is a person's prayer rug and a person's pen. And only if there is no other way to prevent evil does a person resort to any other form of force or any weapon. So this is the concept that we have within the Quran. How did that get used and understood by the Muslims? Well, we see that immediately after the Prophet, the major priority of the Muslim world became how to conquer and how to efficiently subdue first the Arabian Peninsula and then the neighboring areas of Islam. We have history books that are written about the futuhat, the conquests of the Muslims. And many prominent companions of the Prophet are known as the generals that led those conquests. This is a kind of ironic comment that is sometimes made about Imam Ali alayhi salam when he became the caliph in a superficial political sense of the Muslim world. People will sometimes say that the previous three caliphs had numerous conquests in their time. Iraq, Syria, Egypt, North Africa, Persia, and parts of Asia Minor were conquered during the time of the first three caliphs. And that system of conquest kind of became a little bit less efficient in the time of Imam Ali. The same number of new territories were not added to the Muslim world in the time of Imam Ali. And the response to that is that those conquests were never a matter of pride for the Muslims in the first place, or they shouldn't have been. If Khalid ibn Walid went to conquer territory, then we as Muslims should say, where are the speeches and the offers of debate and discussion that Khalid made to each of those cities before he said that I want to fight you or I want to subdue you? That's the record that we should be looking for if they are carrying prophetic values and if they are carrying examples of internal reform as a means of revolutionizing society rather than trying to convert or rather than to conquer. Unfortunately, Islamic history preserves the number of troops in every battle, the date of every battle, the duration of every battle, how much money and how much property was conquered in every battle. But we don't have any records that Khalid ibn Walid gave a speech and introduced Islam and then asked people, ask your questions and I will explain the Quran to you. We have a record that Amr ibn As blitzed through Africa and conquered from Egypt all the way through the Mediterranean coast. But we don't have a record that he stopped with each tribe, with each city, and said, let me introduce you to a way of life that will save you from the bonds of slavery to fellow human beings and from slavery to idols. And in fact, it's probably a good thing that we don't have a record of any such speeches because they wouldn't have been able to convey that message. So that is what befell Islam. Now you might wonder, how is it that Islam was able to achieve those military successes? How is it that Islam was able to spread so fast if such a fundamental misunderstanding took place? And that is the logic of a very powerful message Just to use an example, if Apple does everything wrong from a business and a marketing perspective starting today, it'll still probably be one of the most powerful and one of the most successful corporations for many years into the future. But that poor decision today will eventually show up. Those successes are a result of the strength that was built up commercially in the past. So all of the conquests of Islam, they were the residual strength of the revolutionary message of the Prophet. But that fundamental change had taken place. And that is what Ghadir and Mubahala were meant to protect the Muslims from. So when we say that Eid al-Ghadir is Eidullah al-Akbar, the greatest of the festivals and the celebrations of Islam, that's not an exaggeration. If anything, it is an understatement. It's not just Eidullah al-Akbar, the greatest celebration of Islam. It is the essence of Islam itself. It is the heart of Islam encapsulated within one sermon of the Prophet. It is the entire lifetime struggle of the Prophet encapsulated into one event of a few hours. Because it was at that time that the Prophet said that my mission is not going to be governed by a military logic or an administrative logic. It is going to be governed by a spiritual logic. Therefore, he used the word Mawla because Mawla denotes a relationship of loyalty and love. It is a deep relationship and not just a superficially strong relationship. A soldier does not need to love his general in order to be able to be a good soldier. But a Muslim needs to be able to love and deeply commit to his leader or her leader in order to be a good Muslim. That is the essence of Ghadir. And the capstone, the conclusion and culmination of that message of the Prophet comes in Mubahala, at the beginning of the talk. Muslims generally say that the success of the Prophet was that at the Hajj pilgrimage, you had 100,000 of Muslims. And the Prophet would do wudu, and they would wait and grab the drops of the Prophet's water that he used to purify himself, and then they would use that to bless their clothing and their person. Many of you have heard that image of the success movie star or a sports hero or a singer in a concert. That doesn't mean that person is truly great. That simply means that when people have heroes, they will admire and seek barakah from them. The question is that person worthy of that admiration, or is that person not worthy of that admiration? The question is not, do people admire their heroes? People can admire any kind of a hero. I don't want to make my talk political, or I could give a political example from our own lived reality today. I won't go down that route. But I'll use the example of people's sports and movie stars and other heroes. That's not a sign of the Prophet's success. That's simply the sign that he was able to achieve a wide influence. The question of what is the standard of the Prophet's success, we have to go to the Prophet. And if we go to the Prophet, we will see that on the event of Mubahala, imagine the most sophisticated and the most educated delegation in the history of Medina is sitting in the city of Medina. The people of Najran, they were Christians, but they were all literate and ancient people. They had prestige and they had learning. And for that discussion, the Prophet said, I'm not going to impress them with numbers. I'm not going to impress them with my influence among my companions. I'm only going to bring those nearest and dearest to me. And I'm going to pray with them to prove the righteousness of my cause. What the Prophet is saying is that Islam's success is measured by the depth of practice and commitment of a Muslim. And any other success that Islam is going to have, publicly, societally, administratively, economically, militarily, it must come from that probity and from that purity. It must come from within and not from without. And so, in conclusion, that is the significance of Ghadir. All of the damage that Muslims have done to Islam and to the image of Islam and to the reality of Islam, without any exaggeration, comes from that misunderstanding. That jihad is not about reforming yourself. It is about revolutionizing society. That Islam is not about your commitment to the Prophet and the successors of the Prophet and your desire to reform yourself, but it is about what change you want to bring externally within society. And that is a message that every Muslim needs to hear. And I will go beyond that. And I will say that that is a message that is still revolutionary in society today. So come to people who speak about the environment. Politically or socially, might be very committed, but they might not be good practitioners of that cause. We have people who are committed to justice, but their own lives may not represent a comprehensive understanding of what justice means. We have people who are not willing to give up our own luxuries, but we say that we are sympathetic to the needs of the poor or the less privileged within society. Even in our society today, beyond the Shia community, beyond the Muslim community, that message of the Prophet, that message of Ghadir, that message of Mubahala is still fresh, and it is still revolutionary, and it is still poorly and insufficiently understood. All change must begin from within, and all change must begin from the spirit and from the soul. That is the meaning of Islam. That was the purpose of the life struggle of the Prophet. That is the event of Ghadir. That is the event of Mubahala. Without that understanding, you cannot be a true follower of the Prophet of Islam in the totality of his teaching. And I pray to Allah that all of us who are here, we are able to understand that message, and we are able to understand those Islamic concepts in their original and in their pristine meaning. And may God make all of us among those who represent the best of the teachings of Islam throughout our lives. Thank you. I will conclude my presentation. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Okay, thank you so much. So I would like to have a really quick follow-up with a few questions. If anyone here is interested to ask a question, please. Any curious minds? Go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum assalam.
It's just a question I kind of think about, but I don't know if there's, maybe you have an answer, maybe it's a long conversation, but it's just a question maybe we can all ask of ourselves that, you know, the current environment we have, the economical structure, is that even possible that if all of a sudden magically we can have Imam Mahdi appear, and I'm not trying to be, you know, like make an argument against it, but let's say if he comes and he establishes a government and a structure based on the current economical structure, which is everything is based on credit, that structure, that economical structure which we talk about in Islamic way, is that even possible to replace? It's just a question, like open-ended question.
Can we have the implementation of Islam in a current economic and political climate? That's the question in essence. And it's a very relevant question. So I spoke about, for example, historically Muslims took a lot of pride in the conquests of the Caliph. Those conquests of the Caliphs, though, are often the reason why some people leave Islam. They say that they were violent and they were over-aggressive. And those people who say, what were the conquests of Imam Ali? Well, the conquest of Imam Ali is still converting people to Islam today. Because the conquest of Imam Ali was his sermons, it was Nahj al-Balagha, it was his purity, it was his lived example. Even today, people convert to Islam when they learn about that. So the answer to your question is that the message of the Imam is going to be the continuation of the message of Imam Ali, the implementation of the values of each of our Imams. It's going to be a process and not just a radical or an immediate change within society. And because the nature of the message of the Imams is going to be a spiritual and an intellectual conversion in humanity rather than simply a military defeat, that project has failed, thankfully. The Imams will, or the Imam of our time, when he comes, he will convince people of the need for a fundamental reorientation, not of the economy and not of politics, but of humans' place within society, of humans' place within creation. So in the hadith of Imam Baqir says, Buniya al-Islamu ala khams. Islam is built upon 5 pillars. And then he mentions salat and siyam, and he mentions zakat, and he mentions hajj, and then he says wal wilaya. وَمَا نُودِيَ بِشَيْءٍ or لَمْ يُنَادَ بِشَيْءٍ كَمَا نُودِيَ بِالْوِلَايَةِ. The most important is wilaya. And that's an interesting concept. Wilaya and not tawheed. Tawheed is about there being one God. Wilaya is about the comprehensive permeation of tawheed in every fiber of our existence. So God is my Mawla. The Prophet is my wali. You are my wali. This relationship is permeated by tawheed. That's what the Imam is going to do. A fundamental reorientation of our identity through our consciousness of our relationship with God. And when that happens, the politics and the economy and everything else will also fall into place. It will be reformed because of that reform of the Imam. There's many more things that I could say, but to make time for other questions, inshallah, I will leave it at that.
Thank you. One more question we can take. Yeah. Last one.
Sure. From my end, I think we have time for 2 or 3 more questions. And then you can decide from your end.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
Thank you, Sayyid, for your presentation. Actually, you were here a few months ago at an event, and I came in a little bit late, and you were giving an explanation. I hope this is not taking away from the main conversation, but you were speaking about an act of ibadah that I wanted to understand more about. You were mentioning something that I was unaware of, and many Muslims, it seems, or the Shia, about the practice of the Nawafil prayers, or for the Sunni brothers, the Sunnah prayers, and the flexibility of how they can be performed, and how there's a blessing in that, and the science and understanding of it. Could you ruminate on that of how, not to say the physical bodily movements, but how the Nawafil prayers can be prayed, which it just blew my mind. It took hard for me to comprehend because I was catching the tail end of your discussion on it.
So the wajib and the recommended. Very briefly, and because this is also a detailed topic, I don't want to get into detail, but very briefly, there is a logic of Islam, which is that Islam wants our worship to gradually build a deeper understanding of our place within the world. It wants to give us some depth. Many of us, we want quick results. We want to go on an instant diet. Not me, of course. We want to go on an instant diet. We want to instantly gain weight, for example. That's more relevant to me. We want to instantly have an ability to pass a test, to cram. The philosophy of worship in Islam is that it is connecting you on a continual process of self-improvement. And there's two needs that we have on that process. One is that you need to have powerful actions, and the second is that you need to have kind of continual, and you need to have reinforcing actions, right? So fara'id in Islam are meant to be anchors, right? Salatul Fajr is wajib. You might have had a late night, you might have been sick, you might not have time, but you can't do it for your convenience. That's meant to be an anchor. The natural problem is that, well, what about, if I'm tired, if I'm distracted? That can't be enough. That's where the nawafil come in. So for nawafil, we have flexibility about when to do them and about how to do them. And the reason is that it is the nawafil that are meant to feed into the fara'id. So let's say, for example, you did Fajr and you realized that I was distracted for half of that prayer, right? So you might think, let me redo that prayer. It wasn't good, right? If you're married and you blow a gift to your spouse, you might think, let me redo that. Let me try a second take. And Islam says, don't do a second take. Instead, use the nawafil to make up the deficiency of your fara'id. In other words, through other acts, become a kind of person who will be able to give more meaning into that anchor point. So that was the basic point that I was making at that time. Now, what does that mean? It means that you can do the nawafil outside of their prescribed time. So if you're tired in the daytime, do that nafilah at night. Don't worry about it. You can do it while you're walking. You can do it by gestures rather than by the full movement of the salat. It's better to do it with that full presence of mind at the ideal time. But the point is that it's meant to be a reinforcing and not just to be the anchor point of your worship. It's a dual process that reinforces a profound identity as a worshiper. Does that make sense? Inshallah. And we have time for one more question from Mind, if you'd like.
One more question.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Quick question, changing the direction of the conversation a little bit about the heart of the message of the Al-Ghadir. There is two school of thought about the message of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, that one says that Imam Ali will be the leader of the Islamic government and Islamic faith, and the other one is the leader of the Islamic faith. And as you know, after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi, two school of thought starting from the government and also the iman of the Muslims. So can you please elaborate a little bit what was the sense of the message of Al-Ghadir? Is it a combine between the Imam Ali being the leader faithfully and also the leader of the governance of the Islamic government, or they are separate messages?
Was the message of Ghadir leader of government and society, or the leader of religion? That's $1 million question. And of course, it's been a debate between Sunni and Shia, and now it's a debate among the Shia as well. I will give a very brief answer. In Islam, there was a natural tendency the Prophet fought against to see everything in material terms. And that was not just the mushrikeen. At the conquest of Mecca, Abu Sufyan came to Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet, and he said that your nephew has a great kingdom, right? Mulk Azim. So of course the mushriks saw the Prophet's success as a kingdom. But even the Muslims, when the Prophet was coming to Mecca just a few years before that in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, the Prophet made the treaty which was materially not to the benefit of the Muslims. But it allowed the Prophet to preach. The only thing the Prophet got was the ability to preach freely. But the political terms were not to the favor of the Muslims. And it wasn't the mushriks, it was the Muslims, some of the Muslims. I won't name them, but you can look at history, who said, we never doubted Islam like we doubted today. Why? Because, and that tells you what they thought Islam was. We can win. We can defeat them. Why wouldn't we take the military victory when it's in front of us? And the Prophet wanted to tell, not the mushriks, because he didn't have expectations from them. Even when they became Islam, the Prophet called them al-mu'allafatul qulub. We're just trying to keep the peace. But the Muslims, the Prophet was trying to say, don't politicize everything. Even if you can take a political victory, take the moral victory, it's more important. The politics will follow. The economics will follow. Yes, Imam Ali had the exclusive right to be the political leader of the Muslim world. Why? Because he has possession of our hearts and our souls, and he has the right of making decisions for the animals and the plants and the environment. He has been given that right by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a political office. It is above politics. And so the Prophet was depoliticizing, not by stripping politics, but by saying rather than down to a worldly level, take your dunya and make it to a spiritual level, the level of akhirah. Sunnis have misunderstood that, unfortunately, because they took Islam into politics and then stripped it of its religious content. The Khalifa is not a representative of the purity of Islam, he's a representative of the political unity of the Muslim world. But we should also admit that the Shia have sometimes not fully honored that commitment. Because we say that what you call a Khalifa, our Imam should have been that Khalifa. No. Imam Ali was not meant to be a political leader exclusively or primarily. What he was given by the Prophet was the moral authority the Prophet had, and everything else flows from that moral authority. It's part of Islam, but it's not the most important part of Islam. And so nothing was taken from Imam Ali at Al-Ghadir. The people took their own salvation from themselves. Imam Ali, as the hadith says, Mathalul Imam, Mathalul Kaaba. Imam is like the Kaaba. If people don't do Hajj, the Kaaba is not diminished at all. Nothing is taken from the Kaaba. But the people have deprived themselves of that benefit. So that is not justice to your question. That is, I said, the million-dollar question of all of Islam. But I hope has at least begun to address how Muslims unfortunately misunderstood the essential strength of the Prophet's mission. Once again, thank you for this beautiful event. Prayers to all of you who participated, and in particular those who organized and sponsored. May Allah accept your efforts, and may Allah make all of us among those who honor and follow the message of Ghadir and the message of Ahlul Bayt. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am old-fashioned. I don't know what applause means. If we can have a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My many thanks to Sayyidina Sulaiman Hassan for that wonderful presentation. Thank you, Dr. Surush Sarabi, for the wonderful moderation of the Q&A. Just a quick note to everybody. Firstly, belatedly Eid Mubarak. We're in the presence of not just one Sayyid, but two Sayyids. Thankfully, Sayyid Baghi Kashmiri, our dear scholar, is in the attendance. And on behalf of Imam, if I may, on behalf of Imam, he brought a publication, which is advice from Sayyid Sistani, Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, to the youth. There are copies there next to the documents that are yours for the taking, so please feel free to take one of those. And on that note, let's have a brief intermission. There are refreshments just outside, so we'll reconvene in about 15 minutes, inshallah. We'll see you then. Thank you so much. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
He was in front of yeah. Yes, all right. Did you see that?
No, I saw a guy looking down at the
I suppose all of myself, like, I got burned. Like,
how come you didn't make any noise?
Huh?
How come you like,
Because there's a program going on. I didn't make noise.
I would
I'm gonna come. Like I was not sorry.
Yo, I'm so glad I came today. Like this.
Also,
I like this building too. I like the building.
or did you escape it? Okay. I think it was
Well, so there's no basketball. What do you guys do? iPhone side? Yeah, this is why that would be the answer I would
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Put the confidence away. There's not enough voices coming back. Or you want to try this one more time? Let's try this one. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Okay, bring the contest back. Bring it back. All right. So we have multiple activities. Two activities that are that are going to be happening. First of all, I'd like to thank both of our speakers. For their
You lose. All right, first ticket.
Can I read it? Okay. 1, 5, 7, 8, 0, 0, 5. Well, come on up, come on up. If you don't come on up, I'll take the prize. And what are you getting? You are getting a $10 Amazon. Woo! Is this what you're doing?
But yeah, but it's from my friend Tanya, but she doesn't have it, so I'm gonna give it to her.
So congratulations, Tahir and Lily, on splitting that, because I would split it since you got it. Next one. We have 5 of these, by the way. So we've done 1. We have 4 more to go. Thank you. 1, 5, 7, 8, 0, 2, 0. Yes, the one with the crying baby. No one wants to applaud them? Really? Yeah, applaud the crying baby before she starts crying again.
Hosna?
Thank you. No, we trust you. We don't trust you, Mateen, though, just because you're a doctor. All right, number 3. 1, obviously. 5, 7, 8, 0. 1. 9, as they say in Spanish. 9. 9. It ends with 019. Are you kidding? We're going to cancel that one. We're going to cancel. All right, yeah, let's. So fun. All right. Number 4. Five? That's his number. He has one number. It's 5. 1, 5. Not that 5 that you're talking about, though. 5, 7, 8, 0. 2. 2. Again. 022. 022. Not 02 boo. It's 022. Nabud. Not here. Okay, next one. That means I got the prize, right? All right. 1, 5, 7, 8, 0, 0, 6. Again? We have multiples for everybody here. Wait. What was your name? Anya. Okay. So we have all the friends on that side, you know, they paid me extra. And the sister here with the baby also paid me extra. I'm working on their behalf. All right, last one here. 1, 5, 7, 7, 9, 9. Brother over there was halfway above his seat. He couldn't even sit down completely. He was just 9, 9, 6. Well, his son got it. Nice. All right. Thank you for not being a repeat this time. Thank you. Don't forget to give me half of it. Thank you. Thank you. All right, now let's give it one more big hand for Sayyida Batul. Thank you. All right, and now for the moment that everybody was waiting for since 5 minutes ago. Where's Mahdi? Okay. So, I told you guys, everyone, smartphones out. Everyone pull your smartphones out. Brother Sulaiman, where's your smartphone? Pull it out. Pull it out. I'm not giving anybody, everybody gets a completely equal opportunity in winning this game. If you pay me $5 each. All right, so everybody has their smartphones out? The quiz is named Ghadir 2018. Are you ready to join? Yes. Okay. So yeah, go to kahoot.it, or if you have the Kahoot app, and put in the pin 1909806. At least that's what it says on my screen. Maybe your screen is different. All right, we got Faisal, Farashta. Wow. Amir June. Amir June. Sobi dobi, bahba, bahba. Subhanallah, Subhanallah. Hovercraft. Whoever is hovercraft. If this music is too haram for you, you can hold your ears. Ugandan prince. Okay. Guys, hurry up. I'm going to press start very soon. Lebanon Queen. Nice. Best yogurts in the town. Cool Bros. It's not even one person, it's two people, at least. Subhanallah, Subhanallah. Can we get a Alhamdulillah and a Wala ilaha illallah? There's more? Team Biggie. Thank you. R.I.P. Medina, how'd you get heart signs? I'm very curious. All right. We have 41 Team Imam Ali Center, right? All right. You guys are probably connected to Sheikh Mustafa Akhund, giving you all the answers. All right. Are we ready to go to the next round? We lost the guy. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. All right. If we're ready to go to the next round, let's recite a loud salawat. Oh, there's an address too. Thank you for whoever that is. Hey, Baba. All right. Second question, are you ready? A common misconception is that jihad is related exclusively to love and hate, violence and war, internal struggle to do good, Islamic taxes, Ali Reza Saburi's beard. All right, the answer was Ali Reza Sabori's beard? Common misconception. Say it, misconception. It's the of jihad is. He said it, brother. I didn't say it. He was the one who said it. All right. So question 1, we had 38 right answers and 3 incorrect answers. So we got chicken in first place, Mo second, and Ugandan Prince in third. By the way, there's 3 prizes. So first, second, and third are all getting prizes. And the prizes are significantly bigger than the raffle prizes. It's the same type. They're Amazon gift cards, but they're much bigger. All right. Are you guys ready for the next question? All right. According to the Quran, jihad is about the pursuit of happiness, money, violence and war, guidance. Ali Reza's beard. If your beard is longer than 6 inches, raise your hand. All right, we got, again, 41 correct answers and 4 wrong answers. Let's see who's first. Chicken is still winning. Woo! Mo Saudi still in second place. We've got Vin Smoke Sanji as third. Oh, say that he was our last year's champion over there. He's creeping up. He's in 4th place right now. And whoever's the other Ali Reza in this room, there's only room for one of us. All right, next question. At Mubahila, the worshippers that the Prophet brought with him to represent all Muslims were the Prophet's family, the Muslims of Medina, Muhajirin and Ansar, Umar, Abu Bakr, Uthman, and Ali, or Ali Reza Sabori and his big beard. All right. The number of false answers are getting higher and higher. Chicken is still in, say that he's back in the game, 2nd place. And Ali Reza, you're 4th place now? There's only one 1st place Ali Reza in here. And Ali Naqi is I can destroy chicken with one click of a button. That's called Dhabihatul chicken, right there. All right, next question. Which of these best represents the conquests of Imam Ali alayhi salam? Imam Ali's famous sword, Dhul Fiqar, Syria, his teachings and writings, the wars which won more lands for the Islamic Empire. His beard is definitely probably one of the more important things. 9 people chose the main answer that would throw you off. 9 people. Chicken is still heavy in the lead with 110-ish points more. Ali Naghi's in the game. All right. And Sadi is still in the game. All right. Now we have Sister Shirin also in here. It's a very sweet addition to our scoreboard. Shirin, sweet. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Next question. Al-Ghadir whom the Prophet delivered his famous sermon to X amount of Muslims. 100,000, 120,000, 1 million, 120.
5. Eleven wrong answers. 11 wrong answers. Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh. How have you not memorized this? Chicken still in the lead. And Faisal's making his way up. Before delivering the sermon in a private ceremony, the Prophet bestowed Imam Ali with the riches of the world, sacred relics inherited from past prophets, a letter telling him the future, the average airspeed velocity of... Good one. That was a good one. Thank you, Matthew, for that answer. Someone actually... Is there a way to figure out who... It won't let me. It won't let me. Whoever put that answer, we have a very good Islamic school starting from kindergarten. I think you should join the kindergarten class. Uh-oh, Sister Nzinga's in the house. Uh-oh, came out from nowhere. And Amir June. Who's Amir June? Oh, that's you, Amir June? Okay. I thought it was Amir Hussein. All right. Sayyid Ali, you're only like a few points away. If you want to become the second time champ, you got to work harder. In the hadith of Thaqalain, the Prophet said he would leave behind the Quran and his words in hadith, the secret to everlasting life, his progeny, the Ahlul Bayt, a list of possible successors, Ali Raza's beard. All right. All right, Sister Nzinga with first place, Ali Raza with second place, and Shireen in third place. Congratulations. All right, so we've got Shireen, you get a $20 gift card to Amazon for purchase of future tickets to Ghadir's celebrations. Ali Raza M, the other Ali Raza, you get a $30 gift card to Amazon. You can buy 10 gigabytes of Amazon Web Services with this. And Sister Nzinga. Sister Nzinga, who's sitting down, you get a $50 gift card. Great for saying thank you to welcoming yourselves to welcoming. All right, we have one. It is time now to stay quiet for the future programming. Thank you very much. How do you flip on? So our next, guys, let's quiet down a little. All right, let's get a loud salawat in here. You guys call that a loud salawat? Back where I'm from, that's called a basic salawat. Let's hear a very loud salawat. All right, now let's hear another salawat for Brother Mahdi to end this program.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please let's have one loud salawat for Ali Raza Saburi. Muhammad. He deserves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And I won't even mention the fact that he was so high energy, so enthused, so excited, until it was time to say, okay, Mahdi Gharabi is coming to the stage. Thank you, Ali. Thank you so much. No, really, thank you, Ali. It's wonderful to have you present these, because it really needs someone with your energy. Perhaps I should stay away from here. It's good now. Thanks. Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I only have a few minutes before the closing, to conduct this closing of the program. So I wanted to kind of get us all to reflect upon today, reflect upon the message of today, reflect upon all that we learned. You know, as Muslims, we are encouraged to think. We're encouraged to use our rationality. We're encouraged to take what we see before us, what our five senses give to our mind, and think about it, reflect on it, and use our intellect, our aql, right? See, as Muslims, we're encouraged to take two approaches to everything that we gain, everything that we make as part of our psyche, everything that we make as part of our knowledge, our minds, our thoughts. And the first approach is aqli. The first approach is one of reason, one of logic, one of wisdom. Does it make sense? Why or why not? And the second approach is, like our speakers said, quizzed everybody on, that when the Prophet says, I leave behind these two valuable things, the Book of Allah and my progeny, my Ahlul Bayt, the second approach we have to take is, what do our texts say? What do the teachings of Allah in the Quran? What do the teachings of our Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet and his holy progeny, say in the Hadith? So the first approach is one internal of aqli. We call the second approach naqli, meaning textual. We look to our text, we look to see what is being said. Let's use these two approaches to reflect on the message of today. If you agree with me about these two approaches being fundamental to how we Muslims operate, please give me a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, God, that's uncomfortable, right? How many of you were a little put off by my silence? I'll be the first to raise my hand. Silence, the lack of speaking, the lack of conveying something in human interaction is not the norm. We're supposed to talk to one another when we're face to face, right? What does our aql, our intellect, our wisdom say about the fact that the Prophet tells the Muslims, this is my final year on earth? He sends a letter to Imam Ali and says, now that I know that you've succeeded in your mission to Yemen, join us in Mecca. Bring as many of the Yemenis as you can, because this is my final Hajj. He tells all the Muslims around him. During that Hajj, what do you think? What do we collectively think as Muslims? Was the Prophet sitting back idle and silent? Or was he constantly trying to admonish, constantly trying to remind, constantly trying to confirm all that he had done throughout his time as Prophet? Intellectually, logically, easy to assume that the Prophet of course spent time talking to his companions, his people. Some of the most important ahadith we have about Imam Ali were either repeated by the Prophet or the very first time during that trip in Hajj. Beyond that, what do our texts say? I just want to take a few minutes. I'm not going to read to you the sermon of Al-Ghadir. I'm not going to dictate to you anything. I'm just going to say, if you have a phone available right now, if you've never read the sermon of Al-Ghadir, it doesn't matter, one or two. Pick one of those. Two very good pieces of translation of the sermon of the Prophet at Ghadir al-Khum. If you haven't read it up to this point, please make a point to do so. If you haven't read it in a long time, please make a point to do so. And this should be not once in a lifetime reading for Muslims. For all Muslims, this is required reading, because this is so important that the Quran tells the Prophet, Allah tells the Prophet in the Quran, if you don't convey this last message, you have not completed your mission. You haven't been a prophet until you finish this. So I see some people snapping a photo, some people typing, please, by all means, take advantage of these translations that have been put together quite well. I might have an issue with a word or two here or there, but the message conveys. I want to share with you just a few things about what the kinds of things that the Prophet said and what it makes us think when we hear. The Prophet told his people, Allah has told me, Ya ayyuha Rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik. O Prophet, relay what has been given to you and narrated to you by your Lord. And the Prophet himself adds, fi aliyin, about this guy, Ali, about this man, my brother, Ali. And if you don't do so, you haven't conveyed your message. The Prophet tells the people, he says, I know there are among you people who don't want to hear this, you don't want to believe this, your jealousy gets in the way of honoring Ali. If I wanted to, I can identify you each by name and by lineage. These are the words of the Prophet. He acknowledges that among the people there were those who did not want this to take place, did not want this to happen. But he continues. He says, let me tell you, Ali is the best of people. After me, choose Ali over everyone else. Prefer Ali over all else. He says, after me, by command of Allah, Ali will be the leader among you, as will the Imam, the descendants from Ali's progeny. The Imams, the descendants from Imam Ali's progeny. For they are my descendants. The Prophet says, my descendants are the descendants of Ali. Because of course we know his descendants are those children who came from the progeny of the Prophet by way of his daughter, Lady Fatima, peace be upon her. Brothers and sisters, in closing, I just want to add a couple of points. Fundamental to the sermon of Ghadir, for today, fundamental in its impact, its importance to us as Muslims today, the Prophet mentions, he says, I want you all to come and shake my hand. I want you all to follow along to shake Ali's hand too. Embrace Ali and make a pledge with him. And maybe there's too many among you, 120,000 in total. Maybe there's too many among you to come and each and every one of you shake my hand. So instead, for those of you who can't, brothers and sisters, that includes us. That includes us who heard the words of the Prophet but weren't there to shake hands with him, who weren't there to shake hands with Imam Ali. What does he have us do? He says, repeat this oath after me. I'm going to repeat the words of the Prophet, the oath that he told us to pledge to him and to Imam Ali and to the Imams. Whoever wants to. I'm going to say it and pause after each phrase. Whoever wants to, if you chime in, if you want to repeat after me, and in so doing, collectively, we as believing brothers and sisters, repeat this oath to the Prophet that we're going to do right by you. We're going to do justice by the 23 years that you suffered to bring us this noble. And we're going to pledge today, as we always do, our oath of allegiance to you and to the Imams that you, by order of Allah, have appointed. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We hear and we accept. We obey and we are bound by what you have conveyed to us from our Lord and yours with regards to Imam Ali, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and the Imams, your sons from his progeny. We swear the oath of allegiance to you in this regard with our hearts, with our souls, with our tongues, with our hands. According to it shall we live, and according to it shall we die. According to it shall we be resurrected. We shall not alter anything, nor shall we substitute anything, nor shall we doubt, nor deny, nor suspect. Nor shall we violate our covenant, nor abrogate the pledge. You admonished us on behalf of Allah with regard to Ali, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and with regards to the Imams, whom you mentioned to be of your offspring. Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein, and all of those who are appointed as such by Allah after them. The covenant, this pledge we take with our hearts, with our souls, with our tongues, with our conscience, with our hands. Please recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. as we wrap up our evening, first of all, amen. Thank you all so much for your attendance. Thank you all for your participation. Today was really a crowd that we have not seen before. You all made this program so much better. And from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of everyone who put any effort to organize this event on either this side, on the Farsi side, or upstairs where all of our younger members of our community are having fun, playing fun and exciting and educational activities. On behalf of everyone who put this all together, thank you all very much. A few last words, a few requests I have for you. We care about what you think, and we want to know what you think, and we want to know how we can make our programs better. So if you don't mind, take a moment, please, to just answer a few short questions for us. Let us know how we can make these programs better in the future, inshallah. And I'm going to keep this on the screen, but for anyone who is interested, I've mentioned that the real bread and butter of what Oasis Educational Institute is about is not a program once a year. It's not a program twice a year. It's the year-round recurring classes. And whenever there's demand for them, we will do whatever we can to mobilize a team to put a new class together. So if you have anyone in those age groups who are interested, let us know and we'll reach out to you, inshallah. If you'll all join me with your hands in prayer, let's end this night. Before we go to dinner, let's adjourn this night with a dua for Imam Mahdi, whom the Prophet spoke so highly of in his sermon. So please join me in a dua faraj.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل صلاة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. You have to turn it on right here.